which is something that countries should be allowed to do, especially when you have movements like unions saying we want higher wages, and then all of a sudden Veolia, which incidentally is the company that operates the train system in Auckland, slapped them with a $120 million fine or lawsuit in exchange for the cost of what they would have to pay to be compensated for those extra wages. And that's not just a wages question. I mean, that could be around any area of union advantage or union rights or anything like that, workers' rights, which is won by groups that are organising democratically. Then there are issues in terms of government procurement. There's a lot of jobs that come out of government procurement, and government should be able to procure services on the terms that they want rather than terms that are dictated to them by multinational corporations. And that will affect the job space eventually. And there's sort of, the implications are very unclear in terms of what that will actually mean ultimately. The other chapters that we don't really know that much about that are likely to impact the sort of union space are the chapters on transparency and regulatory coherence. Transparency is the exact opposite of what you think it means. I would say transparency means we get to see an agreement. That's not what it means. Transparency here means that investors and corporates get access to decision-making material for new laws that are coming up and have the ability to interject into that and to sway the course of those laws. So basically extra lobbying power for multinationals and for investors, and regulatory coherence. The exact implications of what that chapter will mean are unclear because the chapter is not publicly available, but it essentially means that your regulation that's set has to be in coherence with other countries in the region, and you can't stray too radically. So basically that means our ability to organise and win the kind of democratic reforms that we need is hacked to pieces. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Which links really strongly to a lot of the themes that you three have already raised around atomisation, the ability for us to meet together and to behave democratically. We've also had some really big picture things here about what some of those alternatives are that you've...
It's like, does anyone actually know that what we're doing here now under a TPP agreement, is this illegal? We're talking about the agreements that we're there. It's like free movement of labour. We've got ports, we've got these big global electric terminals like Millar, ports at Hutchison's, which is Singapore, PSA. Then you've got China, which is Port Hutchison. Not too many years back, tried to buy 51% of Port of Lytton. We ran a campaign and stopped it. And in the end, the big question was it free movement of labour in there? And the example that we used was on Harcourt Island in Tahitian from my mum. And Rarotonga's covered by the Cook Islands, covered by the New Zealand government. And they actually went up there. And what they did was they built the new government buildings. This is just like 5, 6, 7 years ago. New government buildings that they built up there. What it was they come up there, it was like, and the questions was asked, what they did, they created a big compound. And then they built it there, and they brought in foreign labour, Asian labour came in there, lived inside the compound, built the building, everything there, and they utilised minimum local labour. This was under New Zealand, sovereignty. But they built the building and then left again. You see, so, and this is what we're talking about, free movement of labour. Can these big multinationals come in and have this? So you've got the sale of Ports of Lytton goes through, 51%. 500 workers get sacked, and then we've got 500, guest labour coming in because we own the port, we own that part, and that's what it was. While we were building that building, that belonged to us, and that's what it was. So that's what they did this, and it's governed by New Zealand. So there's all these things, freedom of choice. You won't find out until it's probably too late.
Thank you.
So, scary stuff.
So we've got some very big picture stuff around here. Now we get to Tim to get down to some detail around a specific transition away from coal, which obviously has direct climate impacts, and looking at the West Coast in particular. So Tim, thank you very much for being here and for all your work in this issue. So I was wondering if you could start by just talking to us about what a just transition is and why a just transition is important. Because it's a term that's used a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, well, what a just transition is
best definition, but I guess how we see it, to make it concrete in terms of coal, is that rather than what is actually happening at the moment, which is that because of international coal prices have dropped so steeply, a lot of miners are being put out of business. They're getting their redundancy. If they have those arrangements, that's it. The communities are, there's no preparation for the communities, there's no preparation for them. Rather than having that approach, I should say Coal Action Network Aotearoa calls for the no new coal mines, no expansion of existing coal mines. So we're not calling for the immediate shutdown of all coal mines, we're calling for them not to be extended past their current permit life. So that process, if implemented, is obviously going to lead to workers in those industries losing their jobs. So what we're talking about is, rather than that being an unplanned process where people are simply chucked out of jobs, there'll be a planned process of transition away from high carbon jobs and towards low carbon and sustainable jobs. And that planning needs to be, first and foremost, the plans need to emerge from the relevant local communities. And we're talking, one thing I do want to stress is, this isn't just to report about the West Coast. The major coal mining regions in this country are indeed the West Coast, but there's also substantial coal mining in the Waikato, Southland, and to a lesser extent in Otago and Canterbury. So what we're talking about is, as I say, is essentially preserving those communities, preserving work in those communities, not letting those communities simply go to the wall. We put out the first version of Jobs After Coal in May 2014. We've now put out a revised edition, and part of the reason for that is so many coal jobs have in fact gone to the wall through no intervention of ours. In that year, and 5 days after we brought out the 2015 edition, another 151 jobs were Solid Energy terminated, another 151 positions at Stockton.
Kind of underlines why it's necessary.
Is it any questions for Tim or? So the Jobs After Coal War is quite comprehensive. I was just wondering if you could share perhaps some of the most important messages from that report for you.
Well, I guess the... Oh, sorry.
No, just from Can's perspective, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key things... I'll just say a little bit more about the report. The reason we wrote the report was actually a relatively narrow region in one sense, thank you, which was that what we were getting was, I mean, this isn't a report that was written to convince the right of the political spectrum. It was a report written particularly for an audience of politicians on the left, community leaders, trade unionists and workers. Particularly the first three groups, who essentially said variations of, we know climate change is a real issue, we want to take actions to move away from fossil fuels, particularly coal, but we can't because of the job losses. So this report probably does a couple of things, three things I guess. One, it looks at how many people are actually directly employed by coal mining in this country, and it turns out that it's fewer than certainly I expected. It's only around now just over 1,000. Secondly, it looks at the economic impacts of coal mining on existing coal mining communities. And again, a finding which is quite surprising, but well backed up by the data. While mining jobs are often highly paid, coal mining communities are generally poor, and in fact poorer than the surrounding districts. And a lot of that is because the miners do not live in those communities. For the most part, of course, some do. Then we looked at, are the pathways which, what is the future of the coal industry? Well, it would take a long time to go into all of that. But there's good reasons to think that the future of thermal coal, which is the coal that's burned for heat, in particular, is very bleak. And that the future of coking coal, which is the coal that's used to make steel, although less bleak, is more uncertain than it has been for a long time. And that's particularly driven by changes in the Chinese economy. We looked around the world for examples of regions which were already moving away from coal mining, whether by design or more often by economic factors, and what they'd done to respond to that. And we found that there were good examples of communities taking action and taking effective action to create jobs in other areas that didn't depend on the extraction of fossil fuels and that weren't as subject to a boom and bust environment as coal mining and other fossil fuels are. And then we looked at how that could be applied, and we did in fact choose the example of the West Coast, but how that could be applied to the West Coast and in other communities where coal mining is a part of the economy.
Just one immediate thought then was, Joe, I understand Maritime Union, does the Maritime Union represent rig workers? Yes, I mean, because Tim just said there aren't that many jobs directly in coal mining. What's it like with...
In the end, like to come out and, like a no drill, that's it, finished. But, it's, I go up on the stump every 4 years and get elected,
Yeah.
I promote unemployment, I get elected. So I promote unemployment in return, they return the favour, I don't get elected, so I'm unemployed. But, at the end of the day, it's, there has to be ways that you've got to go around it, but, and we've just told them, I've sat down with the government all the time and deal with something. You've got to, if you have to extract, okay, then you're done. It's got to be done by the strictest rules and regulations. And they're saying, oh, well, NOF's given all this Australia. So when I'm saying Norwegian rules and regulations, they're the most strictest and done. And currently you've got 8 or 9 installations in New Zealand, 1 inspector. We can have 15 installations, oil rigs, everything out there. We've still got 1. That's all you have. And yet in Norway, because they've fallen over, they have, 1 per shift. It's a 12-hour day. They have 2 on board. They have a tripartite agreement that it's the union, it's the company, and the government all work together. Like the company and the union can do a deal, the company and the government can do a deal, but the government and the company can't do a deal without the union. So you've got all those other things. So is there, and the other, just to touch on.
I think Joe sorry Joe,
Yeah.
I think Ed just had a quick point.
I was just going to say, we also represent a bunch of workers in the hydrocarbon supply chain. We represent all the workers at Marsden Point Petrol Refinery, petroleum tanker truck drivers, the workers that do the testing on petroleum and that kind of thing. We have this thing called the Hydrocarbons Council, where all those workers get together and they just discuss their industrial issues every so often. So I thought that's a great place to try and start pushing the just transition kind of idea. So I went along and spoke to them. And I found that if I spoke about climate change, they really didn't like me being there. But if I found that when I spoke about issues of resource shortages, peak oil, and said to them, this is a sunset industry one way or another. What we're doing when we decide between peak oil and climate change is we're choosing which days we favour. But we have to make the transition regardless. They understood that no problem. I started with them by saying, let's imagine we're all members of the German Farriers Union and it's 1884 and next year some guy called Carl Benz is going to invent this thing called the Benz motor wagon and we're all fucked. We have to work out a way to work out a new form of society that runs on a different set of energy inputs, and we have to do that collectively because if we do it one-on-one, then we're going to get bought off and we're going to argue with one another and that kind of thing. And they all understood it. There was not a problem in terms of pushing these ideas forward. So I think, sometimes the issue of language is one which is really important. And if we say, you need to transition off them at some stage, and that's something they understand. If you say, the horrible storms are coming, then they don't really respond very well to that.
One of the things with just transition, just like what Tim said, is the actual role for central government in terms of managing change. So a lot of these companies say that they're concerned about jobs, but actually, as we saw from the layoffs at stocks, they're not really that concerned at all. When it comes to, it's these companies where job insecurity is really high. So one of the things that we're arguing for actually is that just transition means that you might put levy on a certain fossil fuel, and you're thinking about the communities where people are working in those industries, and thinking of trying to, you're not telling them what to do, but you're sort of like trying to empower local communities in terms of coming up with solutions that they need. And you're trying to manage this rather than just waiting for people to be laid off as, you know, different